Welcome to Kingdom of Context. I'm Sean. I want to thank you everyone for being here tonight. Tonight we're going to have a fun conversation with R.L. Smith, and I'm excited to hear about his life, his writing, his channel, and so we're going to hear all about it, guys. Thanks for being here. Moderators, thank you as always for being in the live chat, keeping things civil, making sure that, if there is disagreement, just encourage everybody to remain kind. If you have to take administrative action, just try to time them out. As opposed, it definitely is several first warnings before removing them entirely from the channel from commenting. So we appreciate you guys being here. I think that's pretty amazing. Guys, thank you so much for your support for the Days of Noah project. We had some wonderful contributions coming in, and we still got quite the goal still. But I just want to encourage everybody that we got the Patreon. People are signing up for the Patreon, as well as going to daysofnoah.tv to actually directly contribute. If you just want to avoid any of the fees from Patreon, you want to directly contribute to the project. We're trying to reach a goal for all 16 episodes of season 1, which is $250,000, and that's at a baseline. So y'all been amazing so far. People are getting involved with that, and hopefully, Lord willing, this will be a long-running series. Our goal is to put out 8 full seasons. So we're getting through season 1 first. It premieres at the end of our Kingdom Crew Conference, which is coming up at the third week of October, the 16th to the 22nd. And on the 22nd, the last day of the Kingdom Crew Conference, we will be premiering episode 1 of the Days of Noah project. And so we're excited about this. It's an animated series about the lifespan of Noah, 400 years before the flood and 300 years after the flood. So it's going to be amazing stuff that I've never seen Christian content do. Real quick, guys, here's just a small teaser for the project.
Before the fallen ruled with terror, we watched our families stolen from us. It was their fathers, worse than the Nephilim. That was after they went astray. And with each passing year, their hatred for us grew. As their madness increased, the cries of men reached the heavens.
Do what you will! We will never meet again!
My life means nothing if you don't accomplish the charge of the Almighty, Selah, for we are one flesh. If you don't return from this, I'll rejoice with you in the heart of the earth.
We will find the power we need. It runs through every breath and creature. This earth is ours.
Most people don't realize when we talk about different classes of angels, how the Ophanim are considered the whirling angels, and also angels are considered angels of light, angels of fire. So I thought that animation title logo intro that you see with the swirling light that forms into the logo, I thought that was wholly appropriate since we're going to be speaking about rebellious angels during that series. It's kind of like a deep cut for those who study scripture deeply. But anyway, we're going to have a lot of that stuff in the series. Thank you guys so much for being a part of it. If you want to help us reach our goal for season 1, daysofnoah.tv, or you can go to our Days of Noah Patreon. Either way, whatever works for you. Super grateful. We have some good headway as far as donations coming in, and we're excited. We're super excited to give you something to share with the whole family, try to affect the culture for the positive. But without further ado, I want to bring in a brother in the faith. This is R.L. Smith. I just refer to him as Randy. Hey, brother. Take your
on.
There you go. We hear you now.
I said, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. How you doing today, man? Thanks for joining me.
I'm doing good. I hope you're doing well.
I am. Yeah, we're having I'm busy day as well. Just excited that we get to talk about some of your writings, some of your channel. I know that you just released a new book. Is that right?
Yes. I on the 1st of this month, I actually just had a new book come out. So I'm excited to talk about that a little bit tonight.
Awesome. Yeah. In fact, everyone, if you haven't already, I want to encourage you, go to Randy's channel here, Lifting the Veil, formerly by a different name. He retitled recently, and this is called Lifting the Veil. And he's putting out all types of different content that I think you'll enjoy. Everything from, commentary on the culture, scriptural based content, book reviews. Now, have you done an actual reading of some of your literature?
I have.
Yeah,
I've got the first chapter of the book that just came out on there as a reading. I've read some of my Lifting the Veil book, so I do have some readings on there, and I think I've got a teaser for the first chapter of the first book of the trilogy that Dream Warrior leads into. So
Awesome. Yeah. So guys, right now I'm looking at Randy's channel. He needs to be at 1,000 subs. If you guys could do me a favor, if you're watching this, type in RL Smith in the search bar, because right now, because he just changed his channel name, it's not popping up under Lifting the Veil. So as you can see on screen, I left my search query in the search bar above. If you type in RL Smith in the search bar, go sub to his channel, show him some love. I think you're going to enjoy his content, Christian commentary, as well as his writings. Now, would you say that some of your writings are more towards like young adults or grown adults?
Yeah, definitely the fiction writings are more towards the young adult. But I have gotten reviews from people of all ages. My kids loved it, and I've had people in their 60s that have loved it as well. So the target audience is young adult, but I think anyone that enjoys this type of content will probably enjoy the book.
Awesome. So yeah, I think actually we put this up here. I think one second here. This is just a little snapshot of something your latest book that you released.
Yes.
The Dream Warrior is part of an Ashwood Chronicle prequel. And so you have a series in mind for this book, basically.
Yes, yeah. This is the novella, which kind of leads into the Ashwood Chronicles trilogy, and
Awesome.
the first book of that one's due out fall of next year. I'm trying to push it a little quicker. I've had a lot of people want it to come much quicker than fall,
Right?
So I'm doing what I can.
Yeah, we're in the age of people trying to binge everything, right?
Oh yeah,
patience is out the window. They want it all right now.
Yeah, everything's instant, everything's streamable, and they want it short form content too. TikTok's killing us.
It definitely is getting people to it's a different format for sure. I agree with you. So you had some pretty good reviews on this book. Here's one that I just thought we should highlight. Captivating from the very beginning, the suspense never dwindled. ARC reader. This is considered a #1 new release. Now, was that on Amazon or was that on Spotify or Kindle or KDP?
That was on Amazon. And for the new release, I want to say it hit #1 new release on the second or third day of the release. And then a couple days later, I kind of got knocked back a couple of spots. And then it went back up to #1 new release on Amazon. And then #9 bestseller within the genre.
Amen.
I've been very blessed and fortunate with this release.
That's awesome. Yeah, so that shows you that, it wasn't just the initial surge of people that follow you, but after people are reading it, recommending it, a couple weeks later, it goes back up to #9 and
right.
General. That's great. That's great. Great traction there, brother. Awesome. So guys, go check that out. Obviously, you also have a website. What's your website?
I do. It's rlsmithbooks.com. Yep. I think I've got it above me there on my background if it's showing the right way. So
it is showing the right way to me.
Okay. I was going to say sometimes it gets mirrored and people are like, your background's backwards. So it looks right.
There it is. rlsmithbooks.com.
Yes. And that's, you can kind of keep up with a little bit of everything I do there, from my books to the art. I think I've got some other things on there as well. It's got links to where you can purchase the book straight from Amazon, and it does have links to some of my other ways to support me as well. So.
Awesome. That's awesome, brother. Well, it's funny. I listen to you talk, and it reminds me of my family in South Carolina.
Okay. Yeah. I'm in Georgia, so I'm not far from South Carolina, and I actually spent a few years in South Carolina.
Really? Did you grow up in Georgia?
I grew up in Georgia. And then we decided we wanted to change, and we moved to South Carolina for a few years, and it wasn't really the change that we thought it would be. It was great. I think that's where we were supposed to be for the time, but it was time to move back and get closer to family because all of our family's here in Georgia.
Okay.
So,
Awesome. Yeah, there's quite a few brothers in Georgia. I know
yeah.
Josh from FEB and Matthew Jansen are both in the Georgia area. Different sides of Atlanta, I think both of them are, but it's a big state, hot. I'm sure it's in the hottest season right now.
Yeah,
So,
I'm very close to Founded Earth Brothers. I'm very close to Josh. I think about 20 minutes away. So
Okay.
we're neighbors pretty much.
That's that's cool, man. So did you grow, like when you said you grew up in Georgia, but did you grow up in the faith, or was that something like you came into later in your life?
I did. I've been in a Christian, church faith environment my whole life.
Okay.
I probably had the typical come to Christ, moment when I was 6 or 7. I was raised in a Christian home. My dad's an evangelist. My brother's a pastor. I think you've had him on your show once. One of my sisters is a worship leader. The other sister was a worship leader, and now she sings on the worship team. And I've played drums for a church ever since I was 6 years old. So I've been in church literally my whole life. So I was definitely raised in the faith, but I'm not sure that I was serious about my walk until probably my late 20s, maybe early 30s even.
Okay.
So, the older I've got, I've realized that there's a whole lot more to the Christian walk and to walking with Christ than I ever thought there would be. Some of the stuff I grew up learning and being taught in church, turned out to be not so biblical. And so over the last few years, my faith, probably the last 5 years or so, my faith has deepened tremendously. And I've come to realize there's a whole lot more than just repeating a prayer after someone getting baptized, in order to be a faithful disciple of Christ.
Yeah. Amen, brother. It's like, I mentioned this last night during a different interview. It was just this cultural perspective that's so different from 2,000 years ago in ancient Judea, where Christ went up to these gentlemen and said, "Follow me." They left their nets, their boats, they left their livelihood. They walked around with him and actually engaged in active discipleship every day. When I was younger, I was part of the Scouts, I was like Boy Scouts. And I remember we went on like summer camping trips, right, where we go to different states for like a week and do camping. And I always thought it was so fascinating that when I got back, it was like I was come from a different world. Even though I got back to my home where I spent the majority of my time, that 1 week completely away from everything, my life, my family, everything involved, and being with other people, and then listen to these scoutmasters walk around and teach me, how to get my totem chip and how to get my knots badge, and how to get my canoeing badge and my life-saving badge and all this stuff. And they were discipling. Now, granted, the content was under a specific vein of, survival type skills or whatnot, but they were discipling. I mean, that's the general concept of, they were older men teaching the younger boys how to fend for themselves in the woods, in the life. And all of it was a way different from my normal life, right? We had tents at night. I got bit by wolf spiders. We had to shower with extremely cold, freezing water. Me and this other kid, also named Randy, we were like, knocking other canoe boats over and being a menace on the lake. But all that stuff was like separate from my regular world. So when after that week I came back, it was like a totally different perspective change, right?
Right.
And for that little week, I lived a wholly different life. And that's what I don't think the average Christian thinks about that when they come into the faith, because they go to this church in the corner in their town. They go back home after that service or that experience where they may have given their life to Christ in that moment. They may have done an altar call session, went down at the end of church for an altar call, may have cried a little bit, right? They may have felt the Spirit drop on them and felt this amazing moment of energy and clarity and awareness of sin and repentant heart. And I'm saying, they may have had this true, awesome conversion moment. And then they just go back home and, well, I guess, all right, well, the Falcons are playing, so I'll sit down and watch the game. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not like just suddenly you get immersed into this incredible teacher of the scriptures saying, "Hey, come follow me. Take a break from your normal life. for whatever period of time it takes until you know everything I know, and then I'll send you back out, sheep amongst the wolves, right? And then you can go back to your normal life with this new perspective, this new mindset, this new completely changed behavior. Because think about, like, you're trying to get, like, you spend time with someone every day. The person teaching you something can very quickly see your weaknesses.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not like this, oh, you're going to show up for men's breakfast at 6 a.m. every Tuesday. And then, that's like, and then they expect you to get the rest, being silent, not asking questions, just sitting in the pews at church. You know what I mean? So it's like a totally different concept of the implementation of discipleship in our modern culture can be more challenging, in my opinion. I don't know what you think about it. I mean, do you think it'd be more challenging?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Like you said, they have that initial experience and they feel good at that moment. They do become aware of the need for repentance. But then when they do go home, and then they're not going back until possibly a Wednesday, but most likely the next Sunday, life gets in the way, and they're probably, I know me personally, for the longest, I wasn't fully equipped on how to handle that life than I would be if I had been set aside and done what I was supposed to do and dug into the word super deep, and had someone to mentor me and disciple me. Then I would have been set up to be able to handle regular life in a completely different way and actually be effective. Right. What I notice now in the modern church culture is we want to get them, quote unquote, saved, and then immediately put them into some form of ministry, put them into, to become fishers of men. And maybe a brand new convert may not be the best equipped for that until they've had some discipleship themselves.
And I'll be honest, until they've had some relationship built so they can be evaluated. Right. What are their proclivities? What are their weaknesses? You know what I'm saying? Like, this is why you get all these weird scandals of abuse in church, because people are put in positions of leadership and they were not qualified emotionally, psychologically. They were not vetted. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, it can be an issue. And I agree with what you're saying 100%. Yeah. So my biggest thought is, you said, when I was 7, it's kind of like you, 6 or 7 years old, my first moment that I had an altar call moment to give my heart to Christ. And then it wasn't until I was 12, I had like another moment. You know what I mean? I didn't know what any of it meant at 7 or at 12.
Right. Yeah. I've kind of lost track of the number of times that the sinner prayer has been repeated during an altar call. Because, everyone's encouraged to repeat after me every time at youth events, all of those kind of things. You say that sometimes out of guilt or sometimes out of fear, depending on what's been preached. And I'm not sure that you fully grasp it until you get much older.
You're right, brother. I remember being at Baptist summer camp one time. They're doing the altar call. They're Baptists. They never miss an altar call. So I did not mouth the words because I'd already mouthed the words, right? I'd already given my heart to Christ. So I didn't need to do another altar call. But because it was a mass, like, everybody bow your head and repeat after me. You know what I mean? People were looking at me and going like, why didn't you say it? Do you need to, can I tell you about Christ? I was like, bro, I've already given my heart to Christ. I'm good. Right. I don't have to repeat it every single time. You know what I mean? Like, that's, it's not it shouldn't be. I just remember, I didn't know how to articulate things, but I just remember thinking in my head, like, that shouldn't be the requirement every time we come to some sort of large gathering. Like, I just want to learn the Bible. Like, help me learn this Bible,
Yes, I actually clipped one of your videos talking about you wanted to just learn the book, and everybody had rather talk about literally anything else. And I associated with that very closely. So I agree 100%.
Oh, did you make a short out of that or something? No,
I actually made a shorter video. It was several minutes, but I definitely agree with that. I thought, I've got to do something with this because that is so true. And it's not true of everyone. There are people that do, and I even said it in the video, it's not that they don't want to learn it. It may be they don't know how to learn it. They don't have the resources or know what resources to reach out to in order to learn it. But they'd rather talk about literally anything, ball game, what they're going to go eat, their kids, versus talking about the Bible. And if you try to get too deep and just start saying, well, this is what it says and this is what it means, you become that weird church guy that everybody's like, we probably don't want to let him speak too much.
I was the weird church guy. Now, with that said, I want to give a shout out. I don't know if this person's watching, but I want to give a shout out to the very nice lady at the Methodist Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, back in like 2013, that did hear me talking about the Bible, and she perceived that I was competent in what I was talking about, and she invited me to speak at a Sunday school, because I mean I was already going to the same church she was, but this church has like 13,000 attendees, right? So they have all different age groups of Sunday schools. And she said, would you like to come to my Sunday school? Because she was the pastor over the seniors Sunday school classes. And she's like, would you like to teach on this stuff and talk about this stuff you're telling me? Because I had probably talked with her that day for like 2 hours about the Nephilim, the giants, the Deuteronomy chapter 2 and 3 and all that stuff. And she's like, I've read what you're talking about, but no one's ever really explained or taught on this stuff. And she invited me to talk to her senior citizens about this topic.
Okay.
I did not know what to expect, right? And
Right.
It's literally Sunday morning at 8 a.m. The 8 a.m. Sunday morning Sunday school class. And because normally I went to the 10 a.m., right? Because I was in the youth. I was 33 at the time. So I was still going to like the main young adults, young professionals, from like 21 to 35. So I get there, and hey, man, it was like an hour long, me talking to all these seniors sitting there drinking their coffee, and afterwards they got up and they were like, "Thank you so much for talking about this." And no one ever explains this stuff. Nobody ever talks about this. They invited me back like 4 more times to talk.
That's
about
awesome,
this, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was an interesting experiment to see how these people were reacting, because I had a captive audience for once. I finally had a captive audience of people that I was saying, I'm going to talk about the Bible and you're going to listen, and we're at church, and I want to get your reactions and your responses and your questions about these verses, right? Now, even though this was material I did not feel I had questions on because I'd studied it so thoroughly, I still thought it was interesting that my general heart cry throughout decades of going to church was like, nobody wants to really talk about the Bible. But what it was, they had heard all the typical sermons. They wanted to talk about the things in the Bible no one ever talked and did the typical sermons on. Because,
Right.
It's like, if you got four main services a week, every Sunday, at least 2 of them are about the cross in some regard, right?
Yes.
And the work of Christ and how that affect, or something, or the message is kind of pushed back to the cross in some way. But who digs into the Nephilim in a Sunday morning service? You know what I mean? Like as an actual study, right?
Right. And they definitely don't put that on the flannel board, because that would terrify the kids.
That's right. So this is an experiment, man. And people, these older folks, they loved it. They responded favorably. That we've been waiting for people to explain this for a long, long time and talk about this, and nobody ever has. So they were excited that I was willing to even talk about it. So it made me think, are people really wanting to not talk about the Bible, or they've heard the same message so much and no one's ever explained the front of the Bible to them? Now that was literally like 6 months before I stumbled into the relevance of the applicability of the Torah in the front of the Bible. And so to me, that started like radically opening up the Old Testament even more. And it was just a blessing to me. But so, man, I appreciate you clipping something from one of my videos on your channel. How long have you had your YouTube channel?
Oh, you would think that's something I could answer immediately.
It's been a year though, right?
I should say, I think it's been a year.
Okay.
Or right at it, possibly.
Okay. What would you say is like the main thrust or the main goal of your channel?
Well, I mean, a large sweeping statement is to spread as much truth to as many people as possible. But if we want to get into the specifics, I want to hit those topics that are unpopular. I want the not safe for Sunday school versions of things. And I want to address subjects that you most likely will never hear, spoken about behind a pulpit. And some of the videos that I do they're addressing current Christian culture or current church culture, and I give my commentary and my thoughts on that. Other videos I'm discussing scriptural topics, biblical topics, some of those things that you don't hear in Sunday school. And then, some of my videos they're shameless plugs for the books that I write, but you got to do what you got to do. But it kind of feels like I'm still finding my footing with YouTube. Like maybe I haven't honed in on a very specific niche. Because you've got channels that hyper focus on one topic. You've got, like, let's say for me, for instance, I couldn't hyper focus on cultural Christianity or the church culture and not talk about biblical topics as well. But I couldn't focus on just the biblical topics and then never talk about some of the things that are going on in the current culture, and reveal some of the dangers that are out there. So, maybe I'll just continue to kind of bounce around and not hone in too much, because I feel like I can reach a broader audience that way.
Yeah. I mean, I intended my channel to start out just talking about the gospel of the kingdom.
Right.
And then before you know it, I'm getting pulled into Trinitarian debates. And then I wanted to interview pastors and fellow Christian YouTubers and also professors about the Torah, because I realized that was a huge sticking point for a lot of believers to not understand their discipleship, right? So like when Jesus is going around teaching the gospel of the kingdom to come, and he's saying that he's teaching the behavior that we're to do now that will also be done in the kingdom. That's the discipleship he was given his disciples, and I started to realize, like, even if I explain the gospel of the kingdom to my audience, or if I build some sort of audience off that topic, which no one seems to realize that's what Jesus was actually preaching the whole time, was the gospel of the kingdom.
Right.
And he wasn't preaching about himself dying on the cross everywhere. That he mentioned that a couple times only to his disciples. So like it's so fascinating that, like, I thought if I build an audience even off of people wanting to hear me talk about the gospel of the kingdom, I quickly started to see will they truly understand it? Because a lot of people don't understand the promise of the resurrection and what that entails. They don't understand the idea of discipleship here and now and then and forever, as far as what that entails, all the nations learning from the law of God. So I realized I couldn't stay hyper focused on just that central theme. I needed to broaden it out, because essentially the whole Bible's connected. So, if I'm just...
You stole my line. I was going to say it's all connected. Okay.
Well, yeah. Well, so we would agree it is. But I think that there are some very successful YouTube channels that do focus on cultural Christian content and commentary on that, relating it back to scripture. So I definitely want to encourage you in that vein if you find success there, because if you are truly exegeting the scripture in light of that cultural news, right, I think that's extremely beneficial for people. There are some really popular channels out there that already have shown that it's possible to have a successful channel doing that. One of them that comes to mind is Ruslan KD.
Yeah, I was just thinking about him, and he does have a lot of great content. But I don't want to find myself in the trap of having to find every single thing that's happening, every hot button topic, just to feel like I'm staying relevant. There are ones that are more egregious than others, and absolutely I want to address those. But I don't want to borderline, and I'm not attacking Ruslan at all, but I don't want to borderline gossip about some things or get dangerously close.
It is a fine line. So I agree with you. Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe you just, talk about the Pope wanting to baptize aliens, that seems to be the hot button topic. That's actually, you can apply that scripture to that topic.
When you understand some of the deeper, meatier things of scripture, and you understand biblical cosmology, you can definitely attack the alien scam that's coming. So,
that's right.
We won't get too into that, though. I don't want anybody asking who our teacher is tonight.
Well, so in addition to addressing Christian cultural content, as far as, trying to help people have a better grasp or perspective on what they're seeing all around them, all the deceptions that are all around them, you've also been writing for quite some time. Like we're talking about, you not only published a recent book, but you've published books previous to that as well. When did you get into writing?
Well, I think I probably got into writing when I started reading. You know, R.L. Stein's Goosebump books may have been some of the earliest books that I read just for leisure.
Okay.
And of course they captivated my imagination. But as I got older, I'm going to tell on myself here, but I loved fantasy in my tweens and teens, especially the sword and sorcery style of fantasy. Now, obviously, I would never encourage sorcery or witchcraft in any form now in my life, but it did make for some pretty incredible stories. And I've always had an active imagination. So making up stories came naturally to me. I probably started scribbling in a notebook, you know, things as early as elementary school. But then the more that I read and the deeper I delved into literature, I decided that I wanted to write my own stories and create my own worlds for other people to explore the way that I explored other people's creations. And it sure did not look always the way that it does today. I'm not proud of a lot of the earlier things that I tried to write, but I feel like I've come a long way since then, and I'm kind of finding my stride when it comes to writing.
Awesome, brother. Did you ever have like a teacher growing up that really influenced you or encouraged you into writing?
Maybe probably my third grade teacher, because she was my main teacher, but she taught literature. And she noticed a lot of the things that I would write and said, you know, you may have a knack for this. And I guess that's kind of always stuck with me.
That's
One of
good
the few things from school that has stuck with me is definitely the positive things like that.
What I remember, my third grade teacher, Miss Hargrave, she told me I was getting in trouble on the playground one day, and she said, Sean, the reason why you're getting in trouble is because you're hanging with those bad kids and they're getting in trouble.
Good advice.
I know that you're better than that. You're going to get in trouble hanging out with these bad kids. And I was like, all right.
Yeah. I actually had a guidance counselor that told me, you know, you're a bad kid. You're a terrible kid. I talked all the time. I was easily distracted, and coming to find out, it's because I was in classes that weren't really stretching me. And she said, you're a bad kid. She said, but you're going to make a great adult. She said, the way your mind works and everything, she said, don't change that. Maybe just kind of tone back the talking and the distractions. And you're going to make a great adult. And that one stuck with me as well. So
that's interesting. Yeah. I think I was 14, and our literature English teacher, at the school I was at, the high school, her name was, Mrs. Kessel. And, man, we treated Mrs. Kessel poorly. Like they would hide her keys and hide her purse when she left the room, and they'd always be messing with her. But I'll never forget, she asked us to write an essay over the weekend, or like I should not say an essay, but like a short story. And so I wrote this short story about this guy proposing to this girl, and she says no. And he takes her on this romantic carriage ride and everything through New York City and all this stuff. And then she ends up saying no. Ooh. And yeah, right. I actually titled the story The Solemn Reply. And when I got there, like we dropped it off on Friday. She graded them over the weekend. Then on Monday morning, when I showed up for class, she literally ran across the room and embarrassed me in front of all the other, ninth graders, ran across the room to be like, this is amazing. She had it in her hand. She's like, this is amazing.
Oh, wow.
How did you think? What'd you think? Like, I didn't realize she was like a closet romance novel person, but you know what I mean? And obviously I was a 14-year-old kid. I didn't think I knew what I was doing at all. But I guess I had a knack as well. And then so she encouraged me to start writing, and even to the point where, like, literally with the Days of Noah project, you saw me advertising as we begin.
Yes.
I'm having to write a screenplay for animation and voices and all that kind of stuff. And she taught me how to do that and introduced me to that kind of concept as well. And so, like, she was definitely encouraging in that regard. And then I remember my typing class that year, our typing teacher told us to write a short story to practice typing. And I ended up writing this, several chapters of a novel that never got finished about pirates on the sea in the 1700 Dutch pirates doing training exercises in the water and on the ship, and getting prepared for a battle with other pirates.
Right.
But I didn't realize that was something that kind of was a knack for me. But it took a couple of positive, encouraging moments for that to be explored, and even because otherwise I was just interested in martial arts and basketball and football and stuff like that.
Right.
But high likelihood that would never become a thing that I could help people with. But like with your concept, like you're writing books Christian fiction. So I'm guessing in the storyline, you're leading people to the truth of Christ or to the truth of Scripture woven into your stories and your characters, right?
Yes. I want to sprinkle as much biblical truth in there as possible. But I also want to show real world conflict, because it's not always a bed of roses, this Christian walk. So I want to be able to show both sides of that. And I want to do it in a way that doesn't come across as preachy, if I can say that without, being rude about other types of literature out there. I want it to be to where anybody, a complete atheist, can pick this book up, read it, and enjoy it, but get enough of the truth sprinkled in to where maybe it will pique their curiosity.
That's awesome, brother. That is awesome. So do you got favorite writers? I mean, do you have like inspiration that you
that is
feel
an
comfortable talking about?
impossible Yeah, that's an impossible question, because I'm going to tell on myself again, but
It's all right, man.
probably the all-time writer would be a writing duo of Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. They take the all-time spot because they kind of hooked me on reading with some of those fantasy novels I was talking about. They wrote this entire saga that was like 9 books for the main saga and probably 30 or 40 plus books that spanned off from that.
Wow.
It was just a huge world to explore, and it pulled me in. So as far as secular authors go, they probably take the top spot.
That's awesome, brother.
Yeah, but for me, on the Christian side of things, once I discovered Christian and Christian fantasy, and I realized that the two could coexist together, I really just started devouring content. And I ran across an author by the name of Ted Decker.
Yeah.
He writes, he's an amazing author, but at the same time I found him, it led me to Frank Peretti simultaneously, because the first book that I read in Christian fiction was House. They co-authored that one together, and it was a kind of a horror trope that it was amazing the way they wove in the gospel story of Christ into a horror story.
Wow.
And that one really really captured me and my interest in that type of thing. And that sent me down the Ted Decker rabbit trail of trying to read everything. He had a vast body of work, and he's still putting out novels regularly. Yeah.
I saw one of his advertisements on Facebook just 2 days ago.
Oh yeah, was it for his young readers series that he's got? Yeah. I was actually thinking about getting that for my kids, but I tore into his stuff pretty in depth. Like, I've got 2 shelves on my bookshelf of nothing but the Ted Decker books. And then I circled back around to Frank Peretti with the This Present Darkness and its sequel. And the way that he explored spiritual warfare really, really captured my imagination as well. I don't know if he realized it, but there's a whole lot of actual truth that is in this fiction story that can cause you to want to dig deeper. But my favorite Christian authors is probably actually occupied by 3 different people, because a more modern one would be Laura Gallier, and she actually wrote the Delusion series, which is a more modern take on the spiritual warfare, and kind of approaches it from a little bit of a different angle. So if I had to pick, they all 3 are vying for that number 1 spot in Christian authors.
Wow. Yeah, I think I read This Present Darkness in 2000.
Mm-hmm. It held up well.
Mind-blowing for sure. I've read a little bit of Ted Decker, but I can't remember even the title of the book that I read, which is bad. But yeah, he seemed very talented, and actually kind of reminded me of George R.R. Martin at times. And I just thought this was back in like 2009, and I just thought this guy is going to have a long career in Christian fiction, because he's definitely pumping out books, and he doesn't seem to be stopping. And
right.
And no shortage of inspiration. And so that's fascinating. That's really interesting, brother. So when you're done at the end of your life and you look back at your library, your bibliography, like what would you like to see? Would you like to see 50 books, 100 books, or just
for my personal books that I've written,
Yeah.
as many as my body will allow me to do.
So you're going to be like 85 years old, still pumping out books.
If I can, that is the goal. I've got a lot of stories up here jumbling around, and I intend to do everything I can to get those put to the page.
That's awesome. So I can just see it. You'll be sitting in your VR chair at the house, just
typing in the air.
Typing. Yeah, just thought typing with the new tech that reads your brain.
I probably won't be using that, but
right. Hopefully we don't go there. Yeah, there's nothing truly when I was writing my Days of a Deluge series, I remember, laptop at the house, or sometimes I would try to finish chapters while I was at work and on my break. And man, just pen and paper, I would pump out more words per page, more words and pages than when I was at home on my laptop. It's some weird sensory thing where the words just seem to, maybe it's because my fingers move faster than my thoughts when I'm typing, but when I have to write the words out, there's like a synchronicity of flow between what I'm reading in my brain and trying to get out on the paper. And it's just, man, I just pumped out so many easier with less revisions, full chapters. And so what's your process like when you're writing?
Well, I'm a pantser. You have plotters and you have pantsers in the writing world, and I definitely fly by the seat of my pants. I will do a very rough outline. Like I'll kind of brainstorm, and I already know the general direction that I want the story to go in. But I usually know the end before I start, and I kind of work my way back from there. And as I write the characters, I let them take me on a journey. Sometimes they handle things differently than I thought that I would have written it. But as you get to know the character, you kind of want to let the story progress organically based on their personality. And I don't know. I mean, maybe that's insanity, but I just kind of fly by the seat of my pants a lot, and until I get something that I'm like, okay, I can begin to massage this into a pretty good story.
For the audience, for everyone listening, if you've never heard what he's talking about, if this seems unfamiliar because you haven't studied writing or anything like that, what he's saying is absolutely 100% true. When you write characters, especially if you have, like he's writing a series of novels, building a world of multiple characters, the interaction the characters start to take place doesn't always happen like you thought it would when you sat down to first write the story. The characters take on their own personality situationally, because you can't, like when you sit down to write, a 40,000 word novella, you don't know exactly what's going to be written at word 30,000, right? So you have a general outline or a general premise, and you start writing. The characters will take on a life of their own. It's amazing. It's amazing. And you can strengthen the character by allowing them the freedom to not stay within the rigidity of what you initially may have thought. But then as long as it doesn't completely change the plot or completely change the denouement, but ultimately they will take on their own. And this is where, like, there's a couple moments in my writings where I try to make the characters be funny, and I don't view myself as a comedian. So this is a challenging part for me to, like, how do I inject a sense of humor into some of these characters? But lo and behold, the story presents those funny moments, and I don't have to be like a comedic genius. Like, right. I just have to start seeing the moment happen as I'm writing the multiple interactions of characters. Anyway, there is a process to writing. If you're new to this idea and you're listening to Randy talk, Randy, I used to go to, like, there was a ministry from a church in Tulsa that they had like it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. Unexpected as well. The church had a writing ministry. So, some churches have like food pantries, they have the youth ministry, they have, community outreach. This one was people that were writers and authors in the church that wanted to learn the craft of writing better, because the church itself had its own writers on staff because they owned a publishing company.
Okay.
So those ladies, it was 3 ladies that were a part of the leadership of this ministry. Every week on Thursday night, they taught a writing group, and of course we prayed, to open and close the meeting and everything. And but ultimately it was all about, if you want to be a Christian writer, and here's the basics of writing. Here's the more complex that we did drills, like we did, it was a lot of fun. And I went to that for probably a good year. Never seen a church do anything like that. I thought it was pretty amazing, especially because this church wasn't like an artsy type of church. You know what I mean? So it was like so unexpected. But did you ever take like formal writing classes, or like you said earlier, you figured out it was your knack and you just had a natural inclination to start doing it?
Yeah, it was just kind of natural for me. The only writing classes that I've had are the ones that you have to take in school, just your English classes. I've never had like a creative writing course or anything like that.
Okay. Interesting. Well, sometimes, self-taught is truly the best because you're not forced into some weird paradigm by a specific style. You know what I mean? So that's awesome.
Well, I think being an avid reader, this kind of helps as well, because the more you read, the more you see how they're structured.
100%. Yeah. You see different ways that, like, I remember reading, I remember reading Tom Clancy stuff, and I was like, bro, this stuff is so, like, I feel like I'm sitting in a class learning about naval terminology. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. Your premise is interesting. There's political intrigue, there's spies, but he just spent 2 pages explaining to me, naval procedure. And I'm like, ugh. I get it. You're a best-selling author. And I read lots of his books, and don't get me wrong. It's, great storytelling and crafting, but the way he wrote was so different from someone like Tolkien, right? With Lord of the Rings and stuff like that.
Right.
I mean, very, very different. And or like Frank Peretti, very different in how he approached things in a much more technical manner. And so you can pick up on things. And obviously Shakespeare, like I used to read Shakespeare when I was a kid, and then when I became a young adult, and because you're told that he's a great writer, so therefore you can learn, but you're like, I don't live in the 16th century, so I don't know if I can really glean much from this writing prose.
I was like, I don't speak this way.
Not anymore.
Right.
I don't bite my thumb at anyone, so. Tell me about your latest novel, though.
The latest one is a Dream Warrior, an Ashwood Chronicles story, and it is a fast-paced novella that introduces, the reader into what's going to be a much larger world. In the beginning of a trilogy that I'm currently writing called, you guessed it, the Ashwood Chronicles. So Dream Warrior is a Christian fiction story that explores the spiritual warfare in what I hope is actually a unique and interesting way. Now, I wanted to write a compelling story that's going to be fun for people to read, but that also provides, like what we were talking about, those bits of biblical truth sprinkled throughout the story itself. I want it to pull them in, but I don't want it to just leave them with I've been entertained. I want it to get their thought process going and be like, what's he talking about here? He mentioned this specific thing. Let's take a look at that. So,
that's awesome. All right, man. Yeah. And obviously it's already getting good reviews, so that's good to hear. So what the cover art is beautiful as well. Did I hear you say you did that as well?
I did. Yes, I do. I do all of my own
multi-talented. You're multi-talented.
Yes, I'm very I'm blessed with artistic talents, and sometimes one can distract from the other, but it all does work out. It all works out in the end. So I'm very thankful for the talents I've been given.
Awesome, brother. Yeah, it's. How long did it take you to do that?
I have no idea. I spent so much time on the cover. I mean, if we count all the revisions and the minor changes and painting different elements, and then we add the typography into that and everything else that's involved with it, all of this took place over multiple weeks. I was making tweaks on the cover on the day that I clicked publish from my publisher dashboard. So I've easily spent hundreds of hours on the cover altogether. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I've got a unique process even with the cover. I tend to start with my cover before I do anything else. And many authors that I've talked to or that I've designed covers for, the cover's their last step. I've designed numerous covers for a lot of different authors, and I've only ever designed one that they wanted me to do the cover before they had finished writing the story. Because a lot of times they will get caught up. They want one specific scene in that book depicted on the cover, and it doesn't always market the best that way, though. A cover is, you've got very limited real estate on a page that's filled with other thumbnail size covers. So sometimes you want to design that cover that, as bad as you hate to, you want to design it for the market. So I always start with a cover, and I try to implement my character or the general theme of the story, and then I'll start writing.
Interesting. All right. Huh. Well, yeah, hundreds of hours. I mean, that's a lot of work put into it for sure. Normally, if for everyone listening out there, the reason why I'm thinking about this is because, I mean, in my experience of trying to figure out what does it take to get a book published, go through the process of getting distribution. And many times if you approach a publishing house, whether it's a vanity publisher or a traditional publishing house, they will talk to you about the actual production of your book, which is what Randy was just explaining. You got to create the cover, the spine, the back. You got to create, everything about it, the look. And then obviously you've got some high quality artwork that Randy's done, but sometimes they don't offer that, but they'll say, if you want an artist to design one for you, pay us an extra $2,000, and we'll have one of our in-house artists try to create a cover for you. But that doesn't mean that you have control of the process. That doesn't mean that you're going to be pleased with the final outcome for your money. So this, Randy has a very unique advantage because he can actually not just write the story, but he can take one of those moments and create the cover art to his specific liking. And that's a huge advantage for authors. So that's a blessing, brother, just to be able to do that kind of art. It's really beautiful artwork.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of, did you shop your manuscripts at all? Did you shop your large publishers?
I didn't. I looked at the traditional publisher route, and I quickly discovered that most of your larger houses, they won't even look at your manuscript unless you are represented by an agent.
Right.
And then I found out that most agents won't look at your manuscript unless it meets a lot of very strict criteria in the realm of diversity, equity, inclusion, and then that you've got the appropriate trigger warnings for the content. And that's not me. I'm not woke enough to worry about all of that. So I decided that KDP, which is Amazon's self-publishing platform, was the way for me to go. I mean, not to mention the royalty rates with self-publishing are so much better. I've noticed I've looked into traditional publishers, and it's usually an 80-20 kind of deal, meaning that you get 20% royalty.
That'd be good. I got a worse deal than that offered to me.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It varies, but I've seen 80-20. But with Amazon, you keep 60 to 70% of the royalty. They give you a 60 to 70% royalty rate. And of course, you're doing all your own marketing. You're doing all your own cover design. You're getting an editor to look at your manuscript. You're doing your formatting, which is a lot different from the nonfiction books I wrote versus the fiction book. It is like daylight and dark with the formatting. There's so many things that you have to make sure are done just right. But when you're looking at a 60 to 70% royalty rate, and you get to keep all the rights, all creative liberties are completely yours, movie rights, merchandise rights, all of that. You're not having to negotiate that. If you market the book good enough, you do a whole lot better going through Amazon than you do a trad publisher. And I mean, if Mark Twain can self-publish The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and it do as good as it did, then I think there's some real opportunity in self-publishing, because he actually cut ties with his traditional publisher after he had already gotten famous. And, he did Huckleberry Finn under his own imprint as a self-publisher. And we know how popular that book is and how well that it did. So you've got a lot of your bigger name authors now that are starting to kind of test the waters. And yes, they still have their traditional contracts, but they're also self-publishing some titles on the side. So I think for me, self-publishing is the way to go. And I was going to tell you, as I was thinking about this, that if you ever do decide to publish the manuscripts that you're adapting for the Days of Noah, and I certainly hope that one day you do, because I would love to read those in full novel form, you might consider publishing through KDP, because it's you're in control. You don't have to worry about writing to a market. You don't have to worry about all those things I was talking about, trigger warnings, and making
Yeah.
sure that you're very diverse and inclusive. You can write the story your way.
Yeah, that is the plan. We are
Awesome.
currently self-publishing the first Enoch study guide through KDP, and
I've got that. That's a great study guide.
appreciate it. Yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Yeah, the goal with the Days of Noah thing is that after each season, I plan each season will be a book on its own. So once the season's finished and the season finale has been aired, then I would make available in a final published form the actual book for season 1. And so yeah, that's the goal. So yeah,
Awesome.
I'll send you a copy when it's ready.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, because there is a lot, man. As I'm adapting the screenplay, like there's a lot I have to cut out and change and tweak. For making sure the audience can follow the story with no words being said at certain times. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which means you have to skip over 7 paragraphs I wrote in that chapter. You know what I mean? That I'm like, how am I gonna adapt this to the story and make sure they understand what's going on? And like it's fun. It's fun. It's a fun process.
Yeah, I actually am thinking about a graphic novel adaptation of Dream Warrior, since it is a shorter novella. And even looking at that to adapt for a graphic novel, I'm gonna have to cut a lot in order to be able to do it, financially and feasibly for somebody to want to read through it. So yeah, I can only imagine if you've written a complete 80,000-90,000 word novel, trying to adapt that for a screenplay. I'm glad it's you and not me.
Yeah. It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
I would show you, I can't give it away, but I would show you like what I, my outline, because I'm not a pantser. I'm definitely a plotter. And so I will have, like, I got multiple files of all the outlines of the character arcs for each character throughout all 8 seasons. Then I go into the outlines for the locational arcs for different places of what things, where, because I'm dealing with the entire plane of the earth in my story. So like they go to different places, right? And so that is its own plotting and its own sketch outline for the story. And then we go into each chapter's own sketch outline. And it's just I'm definitely a plotter, that's for sure. But for me, that's my process is easier to me. Like if I just sit down and wrote without knowing where each character is going to be, I probably would have to change the plot of the story. Things would change too much because I've got 40 characters in the first season alone. So
right.
like there's so much going and moving different. Like have you seen some of those episodic TV shows where they'll spend 20 minutes on these people, but then it flashes to a different scene, and then it's like a whole different city, a whole different group of people, the different subplot happening. So I've got lots of that happening that I'm trying to masterfully weave together, Lord willing. And so I cannot be a pantser. I've got to plot it all out and
right.
make sure that I know where everybody's going in a general premise. And so, but that's cool, man. That's everyone's got a different process, and mine's much more boring, I would say. I would love to just sit down and just start typing. But
well, I've found myself doing a more outlining for the trilogy because it is a larger cast, but I still just kind of let it take me where it takes me. But I have a dotted line path instead of a well illustrated map. So
that's awesome, brother. Well, I definitely want to encourage you as you continue to grow your presence on either Roots, YouTube, or Rumble, Lord willing Lighthouse in the future, and you develop a bigger following platform, you're not going to need the publishers. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to need all that, because that's a machine that you're basically purchasing with your percentage of royalties. That machine to then distribute and market and do all that kind of stuff for you. But if you've got the talent, which it looks like you do, to do it on your own, that facet of it on your own, then you can probably put that money to better use as you develop a following naturally, and that empowers you all along the way, so you don't have to give up. The creative control is the biggest part that I was so blindsided by, the industry standard of publishing, which is like about it. You hand your baby to them and they say, oh, you want to call your baby Frank? Well, I'm going to call it Frankie and make it a girl, and we're going to make sure that Frankie has this type of included content in her storyline, and then she's going to go over here. And I'm like, I wanted to write a story about Frank shooting turtles in the pond, and now you got Frankie going to the LGBTQ plus parade. You know what I mean? So
Right.
like
Yeah.
you want to keep creative control. You don't want to hand that over to somebody. And that's what the gatekeepers in the publishing world will do to new authors, is they'll take a decent story that they like and they'll say, oh, this is cool. And they'll like either shelve it, twist it, and change it, with the enticement to that young author who has no power in that situation because he doesn't have a big following, he doesn't have his own sponsors, and they'll say, well, this is the only way to be successful, is we need to change. We know what works, we know what our advertisers will go with, we know how we can distribute this because we got all the stats and the data, so we're going to change your original story, we'll take the core pieces of it with it. And this is where, in my opinion, they do a great disservice to a lot of authors. But I think that's changing. I think with the rise of vanity publishers, I think it's definitely changing.
Yeah, I mean, and even the vanity, like there are vanity presses that will print on demand, but they want to charge you $5,000 to publish your book. They do zero marketing, and you buy all the books yourself, and it's up to you to sell them. I think that going through, and as bad as I hate to support big corporations, but going through Amazon is, if you're gonna self-publish, it's really the only way, unless you already have hundreds of thousands of followers and you have this massive audience. It's really the only way to stand a chance at gaining traction, because I can go through a vanity publisher and order 1,000 copies of my book and then try to sell those off and market those to friends and family, and hopefully I'll get an audience from it. But if I don't, I've then exhausted my reach with friends and family. Right. At least with Amazon, I'm getting royalties from 8-9 different countries because it is available on their entire platform. So I know a lot of people, they hate on Amazon, and for good reason. But for guys like us that want to write and see our book babies out in the world, it's really one of the only choices we have if we want to see a modicum of success.
Well, I want to encourage you. Abba willing, Lighthouse is successful, that won't be your only choice. There's plans in the works. Can't say any more than that, but just be encouraged, brother. People have noticed the issue that you're talking about, and they're actively taking strides to address it on a large scale. So we'll see what happens in the future. But yeah, man, it is a challenge, because I remember one of the literary agents that I talked to, they told me, "Oh, you don't have a platform. Like, we're going to get 95% royalties and creative rights to your story because you don't have a platform. You don't have anyone following you. You're because I had self-published a book already, and I had sold like 200 copies. They were like, so they're like, that doesn't mean anything. 200 copies. That's like 5 seconds from one of our well-established authors. The moment we talk about a book, they're pre-ordering 200 copies and within seconds. Yeah, they didn't care about that, but they want to see, like, do you have any kind of political clout? Do you have any kind of influential social media clout? Do you have a large platform? That's in addition to all the other gatekeeping stuff they talk to you about as far as what's included in your content to meet all these woke criteria. And and unfortunately, that's even in the Christian world as well. So
it is. I've read some Christian books that I wouldn't call them Christian books. I mean, it may have some church themes or something in it, but they don't belong in the Christian section, in my opinion. So, I mean, it's invading every facet of the arts. So I'm glad to hear that you're, I knew you were a part of Lighthouse, and I'm looking forward to that, but I'm glad to hear there's some other things going on behind the scene to hopefully give some power to Christian creators that can't be taken away by liberal platforms.
It will still require the Father, but that there is things underway. So Lord willing, we'll see those come to fruition soon. But yeah, man, it's a battle, because the media is what you're talking about. Even though it's literary print or digital print, it's still media. So just because we make videos on YouTube, people, they forget that the original media throughout all of history was the digital print. Coming from chiseling on rocks to then, the papyrus, and then suddenly, what's his name? Gutenberg created the new ink that suddenly lasted longer, around the 1500s. And then suddenly, the printing press was created. And then it was, the whole thing was a revolution as far as now we can mass produce the media of printed works throughout all nations quickly with these printing presses. And the enemy doesn't like that, because then they're like, oh, well, then you can get the truth out fast. And so then since then, for almost 600 years, there's been a constant battle against a printed word. And I think this is fascinating, because like, what did we see in Revelation 20 at the Great White Throne Judgment? The books are open.
They're open. Yeah.
Like, the Father in heaven has books, guys. Think about this. The books are open. Like, things are being written down. Like, it's not, I know we're moving to this new world where everything's, everything's digitized, right? Keyboards, QWERTY boards on your phone, everything.
Deliverance.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
There's a lot of things being digitized, whether it's genuine or not, we don't know. We have to test the fruits. But at the same time, it's like with this concept of like the written word, that's never going away. It's literally prophesied to be in the kingdom to come. It's prophesied to be at the end of the millennial reign. And the Father has his written word as well. So it's a very, very powerful form of communication. And storytelling is, you tell me if I'm wrong, Randy, but it seems like storytelling is kind of like the heart of the Father. Like, he loves to tell you a good story. He's going to weave in the truths in there, but he loves to tell through the testimony a good story to help you learn, have your faith increased. And I think that it's not an accident that mankind loves stories.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with that. Jesus taught with stories, with parables. So absolutely, I think you're spot on there.
Yeah, it's to me, it's always been a fascinating concept. I feel like the Father and Son are storytellers, and
like father, like son.
Yeah, I thought then maybe that's a great way to communicate truth to people. Tell a wonderful story.
That is definitely the goal here. That's what I'm trying here on my human ability to do so. So,
well, I'm glad to see that you're getting good reviews in the book. And I know you're pressing forward, doing double duties. Working a regular job. You got a family, and you're doing this on the side, and until you build and grow into a certain point. So I just want to keep encouraging you. Do you want to give a little shout out, tell about your family a little bit?
Yeah, I've been married for 16 years to my awesome wife, and we have 2 children, 2 girls, 12 and 14. Okay. So they're at interesting ages. They're involved with things with their school, and I definitely have a full plate with the family. But I'm so thankful for them, and they're supportive. My girls are like, "Oh, cool, my dad's an author." I hear them talking to their friends, and they're telling them they even tell them about the nonfiction books that I've written, and I'm like, you might want to go easy on constellations there. Not everybody's ready to hear about the Earth, but I love to hear them sharing and hear them excited about what I'm doing, and the fact that my 14-year-old is a super reader as well. She's been reading since she's like 4 years old. And she read my book and had nothing but good things to say about it. So that was if she didn't like it, she'd be like, "Dad, what are you writing?" So, I mean, it was high marks from her. That makes me feel good. My wife's supportive. She actually helped me out with a lot of the editing. Definitely could not have completed the project without the support of my family.
Yeah, editing is one of the most expensive parts of the process.
It is. And if you've got somebody that is a English Nazi, it really helps. I don't know if I can say Nazi on YouTube. But yeah, if you've got somebody that knows her way around the English language, it helps. You can get a very, very polished manuscript before you send it in for final edits. And big shout out to Brittany if you're actually still awake watching this. So
that's awesome, brother. So just one final question before you go. So 10 years from now, where would you like to see yourself?
Well, hopefully,
Ideally.
Yeah, hopefully 10 years from now, I will see myself doing exactly what I'm doing now. I'm hopefully I'm spreading truth, writing books, but I want to be doing that on a much larger scale. This story kind of got sparked and found my inspiration through things that I'm interested in over the years. Television shows that I've watched, books that I've read. My main character in Dream Warrior is actually named after my youngest daughter, Kara. And the main character in the Ashwood Chronicles, the book 1 is called The Guardian. That main character is named after my oldest daughter, Olivia. So I wanted to draw inspiration for them, from my life. But I also took inspiration from secular media, things like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I always say that my books, the Ashwood Chronicles, including Dream Warrior, is kind of a mashup between Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Blade, but without all of the sexual content, witchcraft, and profanity. And then I've got a dash of Left Behind in there as well, except it's biblically accurate. I mean, Left Behind made for some great entertainment, but we know that they got a lot of things incorrect. Awesome books. I'm not bashing them. They were great to read, but they just missed the mark on some stuff. And I noticed in secular media, there's biblical references in shows like Buffy and Angel and Supernatural, shows like that, but they always twist it. And they get it just, the biblical elements there, then they put a Gnostic twist on things. So my goal is to be able to continue to write stories that implement those elements, but they do so to where you can read it without feeling guilty. You can read it and you can get biblical truth as well. If I can build a large enough fan base for the Ashwood Chronicles and I can garner the support, eventually I do want to shift into full-time YouTube and writing. I've got a heart for ministry. And to me, the writing is just as much a part of that ministry as the video side of things. Whether it's my nonfiction things like Lifting the Veil and Constellations, that reveal hard biblical truths and kind of awaken you to what's going on in the world around you, or whether it's my fiction books like Dream Warrior. There are definitely people that prefer a more analytical approach. They want to read the nonfiction. They want the research. They want to dig deep, and they may never touch a fiction book. But then you've got another group of people, and I think it's probably a larger group that would never touch nonfiction because it bores them. But they'll pick up a good fiction story and they'll read that for an escape from their day-to-day grind. And if I can put something on the market that is fiction that they're going to read for an escape, but then they get some stuff in there to spark their imagination or to spark their curiosity, I'm reaching people on two different fronts. And that's my long-term goal. I want to be full-time in this. I want to be reaching as many people as I can with both forms of media, the videos and the books. And I think that's probably the key for any kind of ministry, is you can't hyper focus on the people that's already inside the camp. We've got people outside the four walls of the church, or people outside of our current belief structure. And we forget about them as a whole within, ministry and your current church culture. We preach to the same people every Sunday. Some churches do a great job of outreach. Other people are happy with who's within the four walls. I want to make sure that I'm reaching out to the lost. I want to make sure that, like I said earlier, an atheist can pick up my books and be like, okay, this guy's a lame Christian, but this is a pretty good story. And then eventually, okay, well, that actually kind of makes sense. Maybe he's not as lame as I thought. And then they start digging, and they can get themselves positioned to where the Holy Spirit can convict them through whatever means necessary, whether it's watching my latest video on why you shouldn't be cussing, or whether it's reading my latest book. I want them to be able to be touched on some level. And I love what you're doing with Days of Noah, because you are reaching outside of just the people within the camp. You're trying to reach that younger generation, which is absolutely needed, because they're not going to get those heavier, weightier biblical topics outside of people with a heart for the Father trying to produce some content to combat the absolute trash that the world's putting in everybody's face. So, wow, that's long-winded. But that is my goal. 10 years from now, I want to see myself exactly doing what I'm doing now, but on a much larger scale.
Awesome, brother. May the Father grow you. May He just, cause you to make the right decisions along the way to help you reach the most people possible, so those seeds can be planted. Because we, as authors, we know that it's the most, not valuable, but the most potent, the most effective, long-term way to teach someone is not overt, but it is with the story, all the themes subtly layered into the story. And this is what the world is masterful at.
Oh, yes.
They tell their stories. They don't overtly tell you to reject God and worship Satan. That's some really like D-rated bad movies. But like the high quality movies, they have their themes of lawlessness and of atheism, of doubt. They have those layered into ideas and concepts as it plays out. As rarely is it overt. And so it is a challenge for us to create culturally relevant content that is just as masterfully woven, because it is a way of storytelling. It is a technique of storytelling. You don't go on the nose with everything. You try to just build a world, build characters, and the interactions of those characters and their dialogue, they're going through their own either internal struggle, outward hero's journey, or whatnot. So you have to, within that story that's being unfolded, you're teaching something. And so this is where it is our challenge, and I feel like our responsibility, if we're putting literary content into the world, or animated content, or movie content, we got to be teaching something. Now I give respect to people that have come before us who also wanted to teach something, and they were Christians, and sometimes it was just a really cheesy movie, unfortunately. But I still give them respect, because it took a lot to go through that process to get it produced and made, even though the script may have been really rough. Boy, oh boy.
There's several out there that fit that description.
Yeah, I saw Left Behind in the theaters in like 2001 or 2002 or whatever, and I just sat there. It was like, because I read all those books, man. That whole series, I read all those books from like 1997 onward, and I just remember sitting watching the movie, going like, this is horrible, because the writing, even though the theology was bad, the writing, as far as what's adapted into the story, there's so much potential there. Right? Worldwide events and everything, and just, man, the movie was horrible. Anyway, Lord willing, we'll get to some things, and then, unfortunately, then you do see good Christian literature and film content come out, like Lord of the Rings, but it's filled with some stuff that you question from time to time. It's filled with certain things that cause you to raise an eyebrow and go, what was Tolkien really talking about there? Like, what was he thinking about? What was the idea behind this whole sub character of people and this whole idea? Because there was a lot of Catholicism pushed into that storyline. But it's very interesting to see. I believe it's possible. It's just with the advent of new technology and new independent driven media, where you and I have just a little bit of control to do something. Like, we can actually build a following on our own. We can actually garner support from the people directly. I don't have to go through gatekeepers. I don't have to go through specific channels that raise the funds for me with private unnamed investors who want some sort of creative control. We don't have to do that. So this is where I pray for your success. I pray for anyone like you, anyone that's trying to get content out there. Just that the Father would lead us in the wise decisions, so that we can be supported properly and be sustained. Because if you're not supported properly, that rug can be pulled, and then you're not sustained. So this is where it does matter that you're supported by people directly, who want to see your content thrive, and not just people that want control over your content because they see a profit margin somewhere. So,
and support is key, and it can be a challenging thing to gather the amount or type of support that you need. But I think that within the Christian community, people are starting to realize, if I don't support this stuff, I'm not going to get the content that I want. Everybody wants good Christian content. They want good Christian merchandise, but we're still dropping $40 a week on Starbucks coffee. And I think we're starting to see a shift. They're like, I want to see this stuff. I'm going to have to put my support behind it. And like you're saying, there's a lot of platforms now to where that's possible. And I appreciate your prayers. I will take every one that you can send my way. And of course, I pray for your ministry as well, because we're all in this together. We're all one body with just different parts doing different functions. It's like the military. You've got different branches to do different things, but we're all working towards the same goal. And I'm glad to be linked up with some brothers in Christ that are doing awesome things.
Awesome, brother. I really appreciate you taking the time on your busy schedule to join me tonight to do this interview. And guys, if you haven't, go subscribe to Lifting the Veil on YouTube. Go check out rlsmithbooks.com, right? rlsmithbooks.com, and go check out his latest novel release, as well as some of his other works that you heard him talk about tonight. I don't think you'll be disappointed. He's getting great reviews. And so bless you, brother. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Thank you, everyone in the live chat. I appreciate all the moderators being here. And we will see you guys. I want to say tomorrow, but I'm not going to spoil that. So we'll see what happens with tomorrow. But definitely on Sunday, we're doing an interview with Vader Bear from Circle of the Earth Fellowship. And Lord willing, in the next couple of days, I'll have a surprise. And so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, appreciate you guys. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.